All right, so for our next video, we need to pull out a section that says either MDR or preparing for the next lesson, P&L 3.7, and this lesson that says 3.7 using formulas. So I'm going to go through the MDR or the P&L. Some classes may have done this already. So if you have, bear with me. Otherwise, I recommend maybe trying it on your own first. Lesson's a little bit tricky though. So let's just get started with playing with these formulas. Now we've looked at this formula before. Area of a rectangle is length times width. When we're dealing with area, it's always square units. So this is what we would circle for area. Perimeter, you just keep the units. And volume, since it's length times width times height, we're going to have feet times feet times feet. So that'll give us our cubic feet. And circle that, cubic feet for volume. Volume above that. All right. So all they want us to do is take these formulas and rearrange the terms. So we're going to be solving for one letter in terms of the other. So now we have area is solved for in terms of length and width. So what we're going to do is they say solve this formula for L. So L is all by itself. So the only thing that's connecting L and the W is that multiplication. So to get L by itself, we would divide both sides by W. So another way to rewrite this equation is length is area over width. It's the same equation, we just rearranged the variables. Instead of A equals L times W, we have L equals A over W. All right. It says if the length of a rectangle is 16 feet and the width is 9 inches, they said, what's the area of the rectangle in square feet? So we have to remember how to convert that 9 inches into feet. So I'm just going to set up a quick little conversion fraction. And they reminded us there's 12 inches in 1 foot. We get rid of the inches, so I have to put them in the bottom. And then if we pull out my calculator, 9 over 12 is 0.75 feet. So area will be 16, remember you can denote foot like that, times 0.75 feet. Looks like we'll have 12 square feet. So the formula for finding perimeter, we've looked at that before, is 2L plus 2 W's. 2 of these L's plus 2 of these W's. We're just adding the lengths of the sides. Perimeter, you keep the units. And now they said rearrange these variables. So instead of P equals something, we have L equal to something. Well, we want to get the bubble by itself, and then we'll end up dividing by 2. So how do we undo addition? Subtraction. It's nothing but our solving equation skills. We cannot combine these terms, so we just leave it like this. They're not like terms, so we can't combine them. And then the last step is divide, and we cannot simplify anything. So don't try to divide everything by 2. You can just leave it just like that. So all we're doing is just rearranging the terms so that the equation has a different letter to equal the other letters. Here it's P equals something in terms of L and W. Now we have L equals something in terms of P and W. It's just solving equation strategies. But now we have letters in terms of just all numbers. Let's try another one. Okay, distance equals rate times time. So it says distance equals rate times time. So there said that distance is in miles. Rate, we usually talk about in miles per hour, or they said in this case it must be miles per minute because time is in minutes. Times minutes, right? Isn't that how we would work the units? So that's why the minutes cancel and we're left with miles, but they just wanted to know what the units for rate must be. So sometimes we talk about rate as miles per hour. In this case, because we've got minutes, rate must be miles per minute. They ask us to rearrange the terms. So they want us to solve for R. So to undo that T, we divide. So rate can be written as distance over time, miles per minute. So it says a bicyclist rides for 170 minutes. Okay, so this is my time. At an average speed of 10 miles per hour. All right, well, we're going to have to change that because we want everything in terms of minutes. But we know that there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, so I could write it like this as well. 10 miles per 1 hour means you went 10 miles in 60 minutes. So it says, how far was the ride to 1 decimal place? All right, so distance equals rate times time. If we go 10 miles in 60 minutes for 170 minutes, how many miles did we cover? So we have 10 over 60 times 170. Looks like we went 28.3 miles. All right, let's try another one. So they're just the same kinds of problems, but they just give us different types of equations. So when you determine the interest, whether you're taking out a loan or whether you're investing money, there are 3 components to determining the interest. P is the amount of money you took the loan for, or what you invested. R is the rate as a decimal, and T is time, usually in years. So here is, my phone is stirring. Here is I equals P times R times T. So to solve the formula for R, we want to divide to undo the 2 multiplications. Right, to undo multiplication, we divide, and we're trying to solve for R. So do you see that will undo the P and the T? And we'll have R all by itself. So we're not changing the formula, we're just rearranging the terms. So instead of I equals something, now it says R equals something. No new strategies, we're just undoing multiplication. So this says $2,000, there's my P, is invested at a simple interest rate of 4%. If you have a percent key on your calculator, you can just use the percent key. And if you don't, you can write it as a decimal. And time is 5 years. So it says, how much interest would be earned to the nearest penny? Here's my formula. I equals PRT. So we have $2,000 times an interest rate of 0.04 times 5. So $2,000 times 0.04 times 5. So it looks like we'll make $400, no change. We're going to come back to that formula a little bit. You have one using that formula in a while. Now it says, what is the interest rate as a percent that is necessary to earn $225 in simple interest if $10,000 is invested for 3 years? All right. Interest equals P times R times T. So we want to earn $225 if we invest $10,000. It's a lot of money to invest at some interest rate for 3 years. All right. So it looks like to get R by itself, I'm going to divide by 10,000 times 3. Do you see how everything's being multiplied? So to undo multiplication, we divide. All right, so let's pop this fraction in. Now remember, the calculator is going to give me the decimal form. So that's the percent as a decimal, and to get that's the decimal form. So remember, the calculator doesn't know we want a percent as a non-decimal form, so we always multiply by 100. So it looks like we'd have to find an investment a little bit under 0.5%. Or I'm sorry, a little bit under a whole percent, 0.75%, just a little under 1%. All right, and the last problems talks about this formula that goes back and forth between Celsius and Fahrenheit. Oh, and then we have one more of those. Now, if you want, you can put that 9/5 into your calculator and call it 1.8. We're allowed to call that 1.8 if you don't want to deal with the fraction. I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this. So they're asking us to rearrange this formula so that it's in terms of C equals something instead of F. All right. If you want to write that as 1.8, you can, because we don't have to round anything, but I'll show you 2 ways to do this. So to get C by itself, we would subtract 32, say F minus 32, and then we would divide by 1.8. So that's one way to look at this formula. Although that's not oftentimes how we see it. So the other way to solve this, and I'm going to show you in a second, that we'll look at in this section is talking about how to now they tell us what everything means. A is the amount that we have to pay for the full pay amount of the loan. P is what we took the loan out for. R is your interest rate as a decimal, and T is time in years. So they said rearrange this so that R is by itself. So I always circle the term that we're interested in. See, that has the R in it. So let's undo that plus P. And remember, we can't combine anything. And then to undo multiplication, see these are all being multiplied? We can divide both sides by PT. And then the P's cancel and the T's cancel. So R is A minus P all over PT. And you cannot simplify, so don't try to make these look any simpler. You're going to leave it just as it is. All right, so let's practice some more with looking at some equations that are in this 3-7. Now, the first one is very familiar because we've already talked about blood alcohol content. We know what B means. T is time. N is the number of drinks. W is the weight of the person. And G is their gender constant. So they gave us this simplified equation. They simplified it for us of a man who weighs 190 pounds, and it's a male. So let's see how they got that number in front of N. So I'm just going to take this part of the equation. So we have the 2.84 N. If the person weighs 190 pounds, and it's a male, so their gender coefficient is 0.68. I just want to show you how they got that number in front of them. So do you see all of this is hanging out in front of N? So let's just pop that into our calculator and see what that looks like. So we have 2.84 in the numerator, and then in the denominator, 190 times 0.68. So do you see where they got that 0.022 from? 0.022. Just wanted to show you where they got that from, that simplified version. All right, so it says, forensic scientists often use this equation at the time of an accident to determine how many drinks someone had. In this case, and we already know this, T is time, and BAC is blood alcohol content, right? The crime lab uses this equation to estimate the number of drinks that someone has had. So it says, find the number of drinks if their blood alcohol content is 0.09 and the time is 2 hours. Okay, we know how to do this. This is what we were already doing in our other section. So if their blood alcohol content is 0.09 and 2 hours have gone by, you see we have all of the pieces of information we need to be able to solve for N, right? So we got to get this by itself, and then we'll divide by 0.02. Okay, so let's figure out what negative 0.015 times 2 is. All right. Again, we've got to get this by itself. So to undo a negative, we're going to add and then to undo division, we'll divide. So all those skills that we were learning to solve equations, we need over and over. So it looks like this person had quite a few drinks. Their blood alcohol is pretty high. They had about a little bit under 5.5 drinks. So it's about 5.45 or about 5.5 drinks. All right, so let's look to see how they want us to manipulate this. So they said the crime lab uses that formula over and over. So instead of having b equals something in terms of these variables, they said, let's just solve for n so that we don't have to solve this equation over and over if we know b and t. So all they ask you to do is take this equation and solve for n. It's not as bad as you think. So this is the equation that has n, or the term that has the n in it. So to undo a negative, I add that to both sides. Now remember, we can't simplify anything. We can't combine b's and t's. So it just looks like this. And then to get n by itself, we'll divide. So n equals b plus 0.015t all over 0.022. And we don't try to simplify that. So they said, okay, let's verify that this is the same formula. It doesn't look like it is, but it really is. So let's check the problem where the blood alcohol content was 0.09 and 2 hours have gone by for this young man, the 190-pound man. So their blood alcohol content was 0.09 and 2 hours went by. Does this give us, it should give us 5.45. Let's check. So we have a fraction. It's the same formula, it's just the terms have been rearranged. So they said, okay, now that we have this formula, it's very, very quick to solve for the number of drinks if we know the blood alcohol content for this man and the number of hours that have gone by. So let's go ahead and figure out the number of drinks he's had. If his blood alcohol content is 0.11 and 3 hours have gone by, he's had a lot of drinks. That's a really high blood alcohol content. See, I don't need to solve the equation over and over again because I have this simplified version of it, right? Instead of b equals, it's n equals. So I can just pop in the blood alcohol content and the number of hours. Oh my goodness gracious, I'm getting another call. Hold on. Oh, I want to get this done. I don't want to have to start it again. Whoa, look at that. That's a lot of drinks. but we knew it was going to be much higher because their blood alcohol content was so high. Okay, and then the last little bit is this formula, and we're going to see this quite a bit on your oh wow, and there's a question like this on the final. So we know this formula. So for this formula, A is the amount, in this case, the amount, you can either take a loan or you can invest money. So this is a problem where we invested money instead of took a loan. So P is the amount you're investing, R is your interest rate, and T is in time. All right, so it says find the value for A. If we invest $2,000, see, and then it's 2,000 times 0.01 times 5. Now, you want to put this in your calculator as you see it from left to right. You don't want to change anything. So exactly how you see it. So 2,000, not 20,000, plus 2,000, and then you can go times 0.01 or you can use the parentheses. So if we invest $2,000 and it stays in the bank for 5 years, it looks like our investment will grow by $100. Now it says, all right, now let's find T. If I know that my final amount is $2,200, I invested $2,000. My phone's blowing up. No, who's calling? Okay, I'm just filling in all the pieces of information. I know the final amount that's going to be in my bank account is $2,200. I've invested $2,000, that's my P, at an interest rate of 0.01, and I'm looking for how long this is going to take. All right, now, the only thing I think I can simplify right now is that. I can't add those together because these are not like terms. This has a T in it. This does not. So don't be tempted to write 4,000 there. Okay, so we have 2,000 times 0.01. That's the only thing I can combine is that right there. Just to make this look a little bit simpler. Okay. So this is the term that's got the T in it. So I'm going to subtract 2,000 and then I'm going to divide. So how many years would my money sit looks like for 10 years. My money just sits in that account. My initial investment of $2,000 sits in that account at a 1% interest. At the end of 10 years, I will have made $200, right? My initial investment of $2,000 is going to grow to $2,200. So there's the amount that I would make in interest. So here's my general formula. And again, they are just going to ask us to rearrange the terms. Instead of A equals, they want something to say P equals. So this has the T in it. So let's subtract P. I know these look weird. Oh, there's my wall. But you can't do much. Can't combine those. Don't make it hard. And then to undo multiplication, we divide. Trying to get t by itself. And these are all connected with multiplication. Don't make these difficult. You can't simplify it. You just use those solving equation strategies. And then I'm going to do this last one. It looks really tricky, but it's not as bad as you think. So I'm just going to do it on the back of my MDR because they did not give us enough room. It's a little trickier, but again, if you're really comfortable solving equations, it's not as bad as it seems. So this one's some good practice. And you can do this on the back of this lesson. There's a blank space underneath this page. All right, ready? So this is the formula we're trying to solve for n. This is the term that has the n in it. So let's undo subtraction by adding. Okay, I see this fraction. I'd like to undo that division. So to undo something in a denominator, I can multiply both sides. I'm going to put this in parentheses so I know that I had to do that first, by WG. See, that cancels. And then we have this WG on this side of the equation. And we're just going to leave it just like that. We don't have to do anything to that. I know it looks a little uncomfortable on our eyeballs because we like to make things as simple as possible, but there's really nothing we can do there. And then, like always, our last step is to divide. And that's all we're going to do, is we're going to leave it just like that. If we want to get rid of the parentheses, we can distribute through. But I'm just going to leave it like that. That looks like a good looking equation. So instead of b equals, as ugly as that looks, this is a good looking equation. N equals, now it has n equals all these variables in terms of B, T, W, and G. That's the number of drinks. Okay, so that was a long one, but we'll practice some more. There's Lumen Open. There's a few of these questions on your own wow. Don't put them off, make sure you try them. And then I will see you guys on the Friday after our break week. We have one video left, and then of course you can always email me if you have any questions. All right, take care everyone.